All right, it's now 5:30. We're gonna go ahead and kick off our pre-commission agenda. Should be pretty brief. I just have one quick note and reminder that we have our Traffic Ops Center tour tomorrow at 2 p.m. So I will be there. Hope to see some of you there. I'm really excited, looking forward to it. Any general housekeeping items?
Just a comment about an item on the
Commissioner
budget, on the
Question about the
consent
agenda?
agenda.
Okay.
Yeah, no, just an observation. Especially good timing, looking at the budget and our discussions in the past about how come we have to build these roads the directions they were. These roads were laid out by pioneers 100 years ago, straight lines in the desert. And the people who built the canals at least followed the contours of the line. And I'm not going to oppose it, but we're going to spend $2.6 million for a bridge over a canal that has to be crossed 3 times by floating feather because our predecessors insisted floating feather has to go straight, unlike the builders of the Middleton Canal who followed the contours of the landscape. And all over the counter, we're doing this. There's so many examples where our predecessors decided, well, it has to be a straight line. So regardless of the topography, and the taxpayers, of course, are picking up the cost of. This is a bridge over a canal, $2.6 million. There's 3 bridges within a short distance on that one canal because that arterial has to be straight. But if years ago, when they decided to develop that area and said, let's make the arterial follow the canal, we probably would only had 1 bridge, but it's an issue all over the county and where a lot of our money goes.
Any other questions on the agenda?
Madam President,
Commissioner
I
McKinney,
do have some questions for the director on item number 3. So when we have a minute.
let's go for it.
Okay. Item number 3, Director, on our consent agenda is the license agreement for regulation and maintenance of micromobility parking corrals. And I think it'd be helpful to at least kind of mention this for anyone who's watching as well. Now, the one basic principle is that parking is under the jurisdiction of the cities, that ACHD doesn't handle parking. Nevertheless, the parking is on the facilities that we build and maintain. Are these, tell me a little more about these micromobility parking corrals. Give us kind of a broad overview of what this involves.
Over the last few years, we've had companies like Lime and Jump and other companies come into the area with the e-scooters and the e-bikes. When they finish their trip, they place them ultimately somewhere that's not blocking the public right of way. That's the goal. It doesn't always happen, and actually, a lot of times it doesn't happen. This is providing places for those to be stored at key locations so that they would be more out of the way, out of the right of way, and out of the way of the sidewalk so that the pathways stay more clear. The responsibility to maintain those would go to the city, as that's what the license agreement is intending, and it would provide those key locations that would allow us to maintain the right of way in to meet our ADA requirements.
Okay. Are these parking corrals going to displace existing parking stalls on the street, for example, or?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, in some cases, yes. In some cases, no. The location, if you think of downtown, there are places where they're just being stored on the sidewalk. But the opportunity for those to encroach upon the pedestrian access route area is much higher than if they were off and taking up a parking space. But since the city already regulates that parking space and at their discretion to give up one of those spaces for these to be used. That's what the opportunity is here, that they can make that decision.
Okay. And so this is primarily, again, we're talking scooters basically, right?
Scooters and e-bikes, correct.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you very much.
I just want to add, I'm really happy that the city's looking into this because it's such a hazard and they're all over the place. And yeah, it's a nightmare for folks that have visual impairments or just generally, if you're walking and trying to access any of these businesses, it can be really challenging at times. And they're quite heavy to move, I should add. So every time I see them, I try to move them out of our ramps or off the sidewalk, and they're quite heavy. So happy to see that we're doing this. Any other questions on the agenda? Okay, Director.
Thank you. Commission, Madam President, Commission, it's an important night here at the Highway District, and we're excited to have the opportunity tonight to have the discussion on our budget. Always, your staff is looking at things from this perspective of what can we do to build together? How can we make sure that what we build is safe, and how do we build more? All with the intent of connecting people to more opportunities. I wanted today highlight a number of opportunities where we work together with other jurisdictions. And this is an example of an event that happens fairly regularly on a quarterly basis. The communications departments from all the different public agencies get together. Because if there's an area where we need to cooperate, it's communication, making sure that we have a common message across agencies. This is an example from a recent event. This was held out at the Idaho State Police. They had a nice demonstration of their K-9 unit here, but this really is a great opportunity to work with other agencies to make sure that our messages are clear. We also develop good partnerships through this on campaigns and other education efforts that we want to do collaboratively with Compass, with the cities, with other jurisdictions, with the police, and help make sure that our message and what's important from our perspective gets across and gets to the wider audience. Just thought this was a great example of building together. Another example of building together, our property over at Meeker was recently used by the Boise Fire. We were contacted by them. They wanted to do some work to test out and to train on vehicle evacuation during emergencies. And so they used our open parking lot there. We thought it was a good opportunity to use that on something that's of interest to us as well, right? If we're talking about safety, having that redundant system of having emergency services available in short order who are well trained is also important in preserving life. Wanted to address today one of the items that has been in the paper recently. We were contacted last Friday afternoon by the city of Boise, who had done an inspection in and around the Union Block building. On the backside of that building, in the alleyway that runs behind, there was some excavation that was done, and this has been ongoing for some time under permits with ACHD, where they've been excavating into the alley. As they looked at this, there was some additional concern that we hadn't necessarily seen in the past, where the roadway underneath the alleyway was starting to deteriorate as well. And so at their initial request and then our further review, the decision was made for public safety to close off the alley. We are working with the city in terms of exploring opportunities and exploring ways to shore back up the alleys and find ways to open that up. But ultimately, there's a lot of conversations. This has led to some litigation for the city that they're dealing with on this building. We're carefully working through this to make sure that we can have it open for public use, but at the same time, make sure it's safe. So this was I want to give kudos to the team. These things never happen on a Monday. They happen at Friday at 3:30 in the afternoon when the calls come in, and the staff responds immediately, is able to get out there. They did the quick assessment. Our communications team was knocking doors to the businesses, making sure everyone was aware of what was going on. We worked with the city to bag off some of the parking stalls so that deliveries could happen that historically would have happened through the alley, that they can happen in front of the buildings. But this is an area where we're paying close attention here and wanted to address this safety concern. Lastly, in the area of Buildmore, I just want to say on behalf of the staff, the 465 staff here at the Highway District, thank you. We know that adopting a budget is a big deal, and it's a hard decision to determine. Obviously, it's one of the hardest decisions that you make, Commission, but we know that it's what allows us every day to build more. We also recognize your unwavering support for staff, and that's been noted. Your efforts to support staff and make sure that those the needs of our team is taken care of, that we're able to provide great benefits and good salaries for the team. But just wanted to take this opportunity from a staff perspective to just say thank you. And recognize the decision that you have to make this evening and the importance of that decision and the impact that that has on what we're able to do every single day. Just highlighting a few other things coming up as noted by President Pickering. We do have the tour tomorrow at our Franklin Traffic Operations Center. If you have an RSVP'd, please make sure Stacy's well aware. We're getting the thumbs up, so we're good there. But look forward to the opportunity to show you the good work that's being done on that site. We do have the Labor Day holiday coming up next week. It'll be a good opportunity for staff to recover and recuperate, and as hope you're all able to celebrate that well with your families. And then noting a couple advisory committee meetings coming up as well. With that, Commission, I'll stand for any questions.
Thanks, Ryan. Any questions?
Madam President?
Commissioner McKinney?
Director, if I may, can you remind me, what is our estimated time for completion of the new Traffic Operations Center?
The Traffic Operations Center is slated for completion, I believe, March, and will be fully moved in by May of next year.
Okay, thanks.
All right, thanks. We'll be at ease until 6.
Thank you.
Well, it's now 6 o'clock. I'm gonna go ahead and call the meeting to order. Welcome, everyone that's here joining us online and in person. Please join us in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The first order of business is to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The next order of business is to adopt the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are considered routine and are action items unless otherwise noted. The consent agenda is enacted by one motion. There is no separate discussion on items on the consent agenda. If a commissioner or citizen would like, they may request any item be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda. I don't think we have any of those requests. Is there a motion?
Madam President,
Commissioner McKinney,
I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
thank you. Moving and second, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, so moving on to our regular agenda items, we have two items. The first one is the fiscal year 25 budget public hearing. This is a request for adoption, so I'm gonna go ahead and open the public hearing. Welcome, Ms. Christine Tandler.
Good evening, Madam President, Commissioners. For the record, Christine Tandler, Budget Manager. I'm here to present the FY 25 proposed budget for adoption tonight. Notation to let you know that all of the public hearing requirements required by statute have been completed. Just a quick overview of the times when we've been before you. March was just the quick overview by the division. We had a revenue discussion in May. In June, we had that follow-up related to that. July 24th, we went over all of the budget. And then in August 7th, we reviewed the publication draft that then went out to the newspaper. Just some high level planning actions. We did reschedule $17.2 million of project costs related to schedule changes. A significant amount of that is related to the Eagle Lake Hazel project. We had a 10% increase in medical premiums, and we have proposed a 3% cost of living adjustment. Thank you. You guys have seen this slide a couple other times. I just wanted to be clear on it. The property tax certification that is proposed, that is included in this budget, is the 3% annual allowance, the 1% maintenance and operational expenses taken from Forgone, and then the 3% capital project specific expense also taken from Forgone. Capital project specific expense being for state in Pierce Park. The FY 25 proposed budget is balanced at $234 million. So you can see we've got new revenue of about 165 million, the rescheduled projects, future facilities. This is related to the beginning of the purchase of, or excuse me, the building of the Apple maintenance yard, as well as the Highway 16 and Eagle and State funding, the strategic initiative funding from the legislature in the state of Idaho. This is just a pie chart depicting the revenue sources. As you can see, highway users fund, property taxes are two largest revenue sources. Again, the FY 25 budget is balanced at 234 million. About 50% of that's related to capital projects. We do have capital facilities of 13%, 29 million. And then our operational maintenance is 16%. And I'll be going into a little more detail on each of these in the next few slides. Maybe. The operational budget, as you can see, nearly 50% is the maintenance budget. development and technical services, and then the overhead. This is just a pie chart depicting the breakout as it is related to the operational budget. That is not 43% of the entire budget's related to maintenance. Operational, $89 million. Capital facilities budget, we're looking at the completion of the Franklin TOC that you guys will be visiting tomorrow of $9.3 million. The remodel for Meeker, $4 million. Apple maintenance facility, as stated earlier, we will be doing, beginning the construction on that, I believe in the next few months, and then completing the Cloverdale decant. The capital budget by program. So the biggest pieces in this pie are related to the capital investment program, that is roadways and intersections. That does include any pedestrian type projects included within that project. And then we have the capital maintenance program. Community programs budget is community programs outside of any capital investment projects. So just to highlight some, the top group is the construction, and the bottom group is more on the design side of projects, the major projects that we have proposed in FY25. I have notated the strategic funding for those. And then we have some really great projects going into with that raised grant, the access to opportunity, as well as the Emerald Street, Camelot to Raymond. That's the design of the bridge, the Emerald overpass, 5 Mile Overland to Franklin. There are federal funds related to that as well. And then the Fairview Ave Bridge and the Eckert Road bridges, those are both in concept design. There's a significant amount of outreach and information needed to begin to gather on those. So those will begin concept design, which I believe is scheduled for 2 years. And then after that, we'll continue that process. So staff recommendation is to approve the FY25 budget of $233,592,812. Authorize the commission president to sign the property tax certification and approve resolution 2425 recovering the foregone, which is item number 2 on the agenda. This will be, each of these items will need to be separate motions. And with that, I will stand for questions.
Christine, commission, questions for staff? Commissioner McKinney.
Yeah, Christine, I just have two initial questions. In our, these are detailed questions, but in our budget, the leading pedestrian indicator project or program that we instituted a year or so ago, does that fall within the safety budget, or is that someplace else? I'm
Madam
sorry to
President,
put you on the spot like that.
excuse me, Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, that's within the capital project budget. Let me look and see which category that then falls in. See if I can get that. I believe that, is that under? It's traffic safety and operations
Traffic safety, okay.
in the capital budget, yes.
Traffic safety. What about, and what's the amount on that? Does somebody have that? Because I know it's changing year to year, and I don't recall what the exact number was for this next year.
Sorry about that, Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, it's $750,000 in construction.
Okay, and that's for, okay, so that's for this next year, but my understanding is that it'll increase and ultimately it'll be something like 5 million per year. Is that is that correct? Is that?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, we're still working through that process as we continue
Okay.
to get design contracts. To date, we have one design contract that's been executed for about $350,000.
Okay.
So this is then the construction of those. And then as we continue to work through on each of those categories, we kind of broke them out into
Okay.
coordinated corridors and the like.
And then is the Safe Sidewalk Program also part of the traffic safety budget, or is that included in the community programs budget?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, that's included in the community programs budget.
Okay.
And I think it's up in FY 25 from 1.6 million prior years to 2 million in FY 25.
Okay. And then, sorry, just one more question. The new capital facilities, we're looking at about 29 million for this next year. Estimate is 34 million for the year following that. Do we have some idea of how that's going to go afterward? Is it going to be, 30 million a year for the next 5-6 years? What approximately is it going to be?
Commissioner Pickering, or President Pickering, Commissioner McKinney, no. If you recall, as of the next year, the majority of the Apple Yard would be completed in 2026. At that point in time, we're going to work on the sale of this property to identify funding for the U-Stick Yard after that. So there may be a small amount of carryover into 2027 from the Apple Yard, but beyond that, it's going to depend on the sale of this property and the U-Stick to be able to move forward on the U-Stick Yard.
Okay. But what's the estimated total cost of the U-Stick Yard that we're looking at? What in round numbers? Are we looking at
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, it's about 50 million.
50 million? Okay. So that's going to be spread over a number of years, obviously, and we'll be determining the timing of that depending upon how things go with all these other things. I understand that. I'm just trying to get an idea for these big numbers because this capital facilities piece of the pie is a big piece of the pie for the next several years. I'm just trying to make sure I have a good sense of how big and for how long. So that helps. Thank you very much. Those are all my questions. I'll have some comments and such, but I'd like to wait till after we hear from the public before making any further comments.
Any other questions for staff? Okay. Ms. Stacy, is there anyone that has signed up to testify?
On our list, they all say public comment, and then Patricia, you said consent item number 3 under public. So everybody said public comments. I don't have anybody online, but just checking to make sure if anybody wants to testify on this item.
And I'm happy to clarify. If you'd like to talk about the actual budget, this would be the time to testify. Yeah,
Okay.
welcome.
Thank you.
Just state thanks for coming up. Just state your name and address for the record, please, and you've got 3 minutes.
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yep. you're great.
Okay, Terry Dennington. I live at 4581 West Big Creek Street in Meridian. And I just had some questions and I needed some clarification on just some of the items in the budget. So on the federal aid, the $8,033,000 of federal aid, are there any requirements or how or where that is used? Where and how that's used? And if we didn't receive for the federal grants, the funding, what impact would that have? Or would we find the money somewhere else if we didn't receive those federal funds? On the revenues, on the impact fees, I was wondering, I'm assuming we're charging developers for that are developing new areas or, where they're building new houses and projects and roads are going in. Those impact fees are coming from the developers. Is that correct? I didn't understand the Cloverdale decant. I was trying to figure out what that actually meant. If that meant that something changed in there and how that was being processed through. If federal funds weren't accepted for a commuter ride, how would that affect the program? And then I was wondering how much time the commissioners spend working with ACHD each month. Because I don't know how many hours you actually put in doing this job. So that was just a question I had on that. On the human resources, I was wondering how are the incentives and awards monies being used? Because that was a large number. And then on the capital projects, it's like $86 million. who are we contracting? Because it just says we're doing contracts. And I just wondered, because that's a big piece of that, that as well. So the capital projects. So those are just my questions and hopefully I can get some answers. And
Thank you.
That's
Yeah,
it.
I think so Christine will be able to answer a couple of them.
Yeah,
So she'll come up and answer those in the mic so folks can hear online. So do you mind just having a seat and Christine will answer those?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Madam President, Commissioners, some answers to the questions that Ms. Dennington brought up. So with the federal aid, so specifically federal aid projects are determined and we receive them based on applying for those funds. And then we receive them based on the project specific. Big bulk of the federal aid is related to capital maintenance type projects, as well as the RAISE grant that we got, which is design related. That's happening in FY 26, or excuse me, FY 25 and 26. The comment on without those funds, how would we move forward? It would have to be programmed and budgeted and prioritized amongst the rest of the same projects without those additional fundings. Yeah, impact fees, yes, we charge impact fees to developers, and then those projects or those fees go to offset projects that we then do that are identified in our capital improvements plan. The Cloverdale decant, that's a project that the district's working on at the Cloverdale facility. It's redoing the entire decant facility. It's a very big undertaking. It's a total of about a $5 million project to in order to cover the decant facility, ensure that the
Christine, do you mind explaining what like just really quick a sentence about a decant? the
Oh,
decant
right, yeah,
facility is? 'Cause I
so-
think that might be. the
right.
question.
So as we as our street sweepers take in and sweep off the roads and clean up debris and then clean up through the back trucks out of the drainage issues, any flooding issues that we have, all of that water that we get, we then have to treat it and facilitate it before that water then gets back into the water system.
Our
so it-
rivers, yeah.
What's that?
Our rivers, yep.
Right.
Mhm.
We're treating water through the
Mhm.
process, right? And so there are settling areas for each of those. And then the water then goes through each of those. And then the debris that doesn't filter through, that is left through sediment, we then throw that away, and then the water can go back into the general waters, stormwater, the rivers and the lake. Sewer goes through the sewer. Jeez, it's only so much an accountant can know.
Great, Christine, you did great. You did great.
Madam President, Commissioners, I'm gonna leave the question on how many hours per month
Yeah.
you work.
I was gonna say that depends on every commissioner, and it wouldn't be fair for me to assume how much each commissioner.
Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds,
Yeah, I
right?
think you'll have to ask each of us individually for that one.
With the HR incentives and awards, so that just has to do with, during post the pandemic, we had instituted some incentives for personnel to come work for the agency. So we want to entice them to come. There are certain positions that have incentives and some that don't. And then we also have awards, service awards for retention related to that, similar to, I think it was implemented similar to the time around when we began those retention, those incentives for coming onto the agency, one for staying at the agency, and it depending on how long you've been at the agency. And then capital projects, this is the last question I have, and I may not have written fast enough, but contractual services. So that just has to do with our construction budget. So we have $87 million worth of construction projects programmed for FY 25. So all of those will go through a competitive bid process. The big projects of those are Eagle and Lake Hazel, and Eagle Lake Hazel to Amity that the commission approved the bid. It was about $20 million. They approved that bid last week, but that goes through the bidding process. So one of the things is we look at the budget and you look at, we talk about it in programs that it is, and then we talk about it in phases. So what phase a project is, design, right-of-way, and construction, in order for us to be, probably mostly accounting, to be able to track where we are in the overall process and overall project so that we know what needs done. So there's going to be a balance between how much we have in design, how much we have in right-of-way, and then construction. Okay? Those were all the questions that I caught.
Thank you for your questions. I don't know, did we miss anything? Did we answer all your questions? Fabulous. Okay. Is there, oh, Commissioner Goldthorpe.
When I was first elected, it was kind of a humorous conversation that I had with someone here on the executive team who made the comment, welcome to a full-time position with very part-time compensation. He wasn't wrong. So that's about as much detail as I can give you without punching a time clock.
Okay. Is there anyone else that would like to testify on the budget? Anyone else online, Miss Stacy? All right. Well, then I'm going to go ahead and close the public comment period in the hearing. Commissioners.
Well, I'll start.
Commissioner Goldthorpe.
During the last year, as we've been developing this budget, which is kind of the same process and length of time it takes for us to develop the 5-year integrated work plan, there's just not a ton of, until earlier this year, of public opportunities to watch it and to participate. But this has been something that we've gone through with a fine-tooth comb several times. We've made changes. We've talked a lot about what has to go on with regards to our capital programs, with regards to our the acquisition of some of the property and the facilities acquisitions that we've been doing, and had to make some changes within the budget to compensate that in order to save a whole lot of money down the road. There are, I suppose the thing that's bugged me the most in the last 10 years about how we gain revenue and then spend it has been the impact of inflation on what we can do for the citizens of Ada County. And it's just been awful, in my opinion, to watch the bang for the buck, as it were, get smaller and smaller and smaller. Over the last number of years since 2010, there have been a number of years where the money, even just the raw dollars, not even considering the effective inflation, the raw dollars have gone down. There's 3 or 4 of those years. In some cases, it was drastic. This year, what ACHD receives in the way of property taxes, even if we take the full 3% and the foregone and everything, is less than what you paid in 2021. So it's been interesting, to say the very least, to see what's happened tax-wise, other revenue-wise. You asked the question, ma'am, about federal funds. We don't use them, they're gone. Many of the federal funds that we receive, we only have to match about 7%. So it's quite a bang for the buck that way, to use my phrase again. And if it weren't for that low match, we would, if we wanted to do that project, we'd have to take it out of the tax revenue and our other revenues, and it might never get programmed to be done. Anyway, all I wanted to say really about our budget, one thing is, as Director Head mentioned, we love the staff of the Ada County Highway District. We have incredible people working here. Years ago, I made the comment that I thought it ought to be our goal which has absolutely been accomplished to make a career at the Ada County Highway District a career shop, not a career pit stop. And that's why you see the quality of the roads here in Ada County, which are far superior to way more than 95% of the other jurisdictions in the United States of America. With the minimal, and I don't mean to make it sound like it's small, but with the levy that we receive tax revenues from in the overall property tax bill, it is amazing what we have done, because we cannot, like as is the case with most highway districts and municipal entities in the United States, we cannot change our budget and take money from the roads and put it in some other public works. We cannot take money from the roads to build parks. We cannot take money from the roads to build green belts. None of that stuff. Every dime that you give us has to be spent for roads. I have a rather crude way of putting this. We can't steal, which means robbing Peter to pay Paul and having Paul be something totally unrelated to Peter. I love that. That's why I like this model that we have here in Ada County so well. And because of all these things and many more, I'm going to be very supportive of the budget that we have to present tonight, as well as the 3% and as well as the Forgone, because the net result is less money to us than we got in 2021. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Walter. Is that a motion?
Oh, I'd be happy to make the motion that we approve the fiscal year 25 budget, that it be adopted.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded.
Madam President,
Discussion, Commissioner McKinney.
yeah, I'd like to hear from all the other commissioners before we actually vote on this. I think I would presume everyone else has something to say on this, because and I'd like to hear what you have to say.
Well, we can talk about during the discussion since there's a motion on the floor. So do you have any comments that you'd like to share? As it
I'd like
pertains
to
to
hear
the
what
motion.
everyone else has to say first. No one else has spoken.
Commissioner Hanson?
Well, I'll say a couple things and then I'll probably add a few more. This would be the first time in a long time to raise taxes or take the 3%. First of all, I just want to echo Commissioner Goldthorpe's. We have tremendous staff. I really appreciate the extra effort they go to make this place work within the confines of what we do. I just particularly want to shout out our planning staff and the process by which various projects have been shared with the public. It's so much easier now to know what we're spending on, at least as to projects, because of the great work our staff is doing. And so you just get online and you can see constantly what these projects are, what they cost. The flip side, of course, is that more and more people are doing that and they're finding out, wow, this is a great project. Or where's my project? Or where's the thing our neighborhood's been asking for years? It's still not there. And that they can also look at other projects in other neighborhoods to see. And they can see the dates at which we estimate we'll do them. So there is that added knowledge also gives them the ability to help us. Oh, so why is it so much has been prioritized elsewhere than the neighborhood that I'm from? Of course, everybody's paying its property taxes. And there's also been this process of understanding that our asset, the right-of-way is our asset. And I always like to refer to it as the right-of-way. So it's the right-of-way is the asset. It's a multi-billion-dollar asset that we have to maintain for the public. And maintaining that and making it productive is critical. The key component of making it productive is making it safe. If it's not safe, people don't use it. or we have to go back and fix it. We've done some good things to make things, the process for us to reach the point of coming up with safe designs. I think huge kudos to our access management policy changes, our multi-use pathways on arterials. There's a lot of work that we've done, made it more safe. I think the work that communications has done has been terrific. More and more people know. It used to be they'd stumble over highway district. So ACHD, they say, oh, okay, now I know you're about the right of way, Ada County right of way district. The area I represent a lot of old neighborhoods. So the investments in those neighborhoods, they've been waiting for a long time for some of the improvements. I'm so glad that some of our federal money this year is coming through a special program called Raise Grant. And my frustration is that we've put sidebars on our capital maintenance grants and gotten Compass to say this is how it's limited to capital maintenance of certain arterial facilities and some collector roads, certain perimeters on what we can do, spend it on. And I'm frustrated that that's limited our ability. So I've seen what are called federal capital maintenance projects sort of move on up, even though other projects that don't necessarily qualify don't. I think we need to be as creative about applying all of our federal funds. Those are tax dollars we as taxpayers pay through the federal government. Then they match it. We can't do what the state does and borrow against future revenue. The state can do that. There's a lot of state facilities that are being spent with debt, anticipating the feds are going to continue to provide money. So we can't do that. So we really need to be much more creative about using our federal capital maintenance. I don't think again, this year, as in past years, the balance between what people are putting in each of the neighborhoods and what they're getting back is balanced out. We haven't figured that out yet. And so I can't support a 3%.
Okay, thanks, Commissioner Hanson. Commissioner McKinney.
So Commissioner Gold have any comments? Do you have any comments?
He just,
Madam President,
Okay.
I'll go ahead.
Commissioner Gold.
Yeah, I will be supporting the budget. I agree with Commissioner Goldthorpe's comments about the work that we've done on the budget this year. And I know, that it's a tricky subject in terms of raising property taxes in the Forgone, but I think that has a compounding impact over time to not do that. And on our levy rate and how far our dollars can go. And so, that's why I'm in support of that, so that we can try to have a bigger impact on our operations and our overall system over the next year. I also agree with the facilities comment and how we're allocating funds over the next couple of years to save money in the long run. And, I do agree with Commissioner Hanson's comments about our process and the allocation of projects. And I think that we can continue to refine that even after the budget is adopted. So, one concern, and I spoke to this at the last meeting, is the, not having 25% of our chip seal done in this last chip seal zone, and what that impact looks like and the cost of deferred maintenance. And so I do want to continue to dive into that conversation. But otherwise, I'm supportive of the budget.
Thanks. Okay, you're up.
You don't have any comments?
I'll be the last to close.
Ah,
Up to
okay.
you.
Well, the budget of, 233 million, that's no chump change. That's a fairly substantial budget. And I guess from what it sounds like, Commissioner Hanson, you're saying you don't support taking the 3% property tax increase, but you do support taking the new construction increase. And what about the Forgone? I'm just trying to gauge what the different commissioners are thinking on this matter. Is that correct, Commissioner Hanson? You said no on the No on the property tax increase?
That's the critical thing for my mind, the distribution of the capital projects.
No, and that's your reason for it, but what the conclusion is you can't support the budget with the request for the property tax increase. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so if you're gonna make a motion with something different.
No, I'm just trying to
just listen
understand.
to- So
what you're-
that's where I'm coming from. Yep.
So you would oppose the motion?
That's, yeah, the motion that has been
Okay.
on the table, I'm not inclined to vote for.
And Commissioner Goldthorpe and Commissioner Gold, you've both said you're okay with it. You're in favor of it. Is that correct? Okay. You know, and I think overall, you know, the budget in general, I think our people do a good job of you know, putting together what is a very complicated piece of what, I don't know, accounting work to put this budget together every year. And what we're looking at here, the question is between, you know, accepting the budget with no tax increase versus with it, or a couple of spots we've looked at in between. That is to say, you know, there's the foregone amount, and there was that slide, Christine, that you had earlier that showed those different chunks of the proposed revenue increases. Altogether, if all three of those were passed, they would make a difference of about $3.5 million, I believe, in the total budget. That is to say, or the total revenues. So the question of whether to raise our property tax certification, you know, it boils down to that. It's about a $3.5 million question. But I think Commissioner Goldthorpe was accurate. We have these graphs that staff has provided to us that show the property tax burden on a homeowner from ACHD's portion of your property tax bill. And those have gone down in the last few years, actually. Even with inflation, the average property tax assessment, ACHD portion of the property tax assessment of the average homeowner in Ada County has gone down. And so when you look at that and you factor in inflation, you can say, I can certainly see why the staff looks at this and says, you know what, we need the resources, and things have kind of gone downhill the last few years, money-wise. Maybe that's not the right way to put it, but in any case, our revenues from property taxes have gone down a bit the last few years. Instead of, with inflation, one would expect that they would go up. So what's been happening here is kind of counterintuitive to what the overall economy has done. And so in the end, if we took all of the proposed property tax increase, the foregone plus the new construction plus the 3% annual allowable amount, that would put, as I think Commissioner Goldthorpe accurately said, that would put the average homeowner's ACHD portion of their property tax assessment almost at where it was 2 or 3 years ago, probably slightly under what it was. And so when you look at the inflation, add inflation into that, that sounds perfectly reasonable. Here's my concern, and this is where it comes in. This is why I had those questions about our capital facilities. And I guess an analogy, I'll make an analogy. When when a ship is at sea and it's under stress, they will, divert power to the most important functions. And we're kind of, as an agency, kind of like that. Our core function is building and maintaining highways. That's the core function of the Ada County Highway District. But the stress we're under right now is really the stress of these capital facilities that we're building, which aren't roads. They're essential to our future ability to build and maintain roads. So they're absolutely needed. Nevertheless, 30 million or more per year is being, allocated to do that, where otherwise, we could put that into the roads. And in a situation like this, I look at it and I say, given that we have this added stress that's taking away from our ability to fulfill our core function, our core mission of building and maintaining highways, it makes sense to me that we look for ways to divert power. And in our case, power is money. Power is our budget. And it strikes me that in the end, I could support the budget with the proposed tax certification if we look at these pie charts and agree to reallocate a comparable, at least a comparable amount into the road building portion of the budget. So that would be the capital projects portion of the pie chart. And the place where that would need to come from, it strikes me, is the community programs portion of the budget. Primarily because while these are good things to have, but they're what we would call ancillary facilities. In addition to the fact that we're building all of that when we build highways as well. So if we can, I would propose an amendment to the motion that we reduce the community programs budget by an amount approximately equal to the property tax increase and put that into the capital projects budget. If we can do that, I would be willing to go forward with this motion.
Is
Right,
that,
be-
is
before you
is that
say-
an actual motion or is that a question?
I was gonna say, I won't amend my motion, so you need to make that as a substitute
Is that a
motion.
motion or a question?
Well, let me first get some additional information. It looks like staff has some additional information that they'd like to give.
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, just for point of clarification, moving funds over to capital projects, we would need to have capital projects ready to be built. We do not have projects that have design ready to go that could be built next year of that $5 million figure.
But does not the capital projects budget also include the money that's used for designing those projects?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, absolutely it does. It does include design and right of way, but the design of an additional $5 million worth of projects, I would say our staff capacity would not be able to take on that additional workload as it currently stands.
So what you're saying is there's no way that we can shift money around at all. That strikes me as a bit odd.
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, in the short order of a budget, I would say that gets a little bit more challenging. In the long-term conversations of a 5-year plan and shifting over time, that can be part of the conversation. But to add in 5 million and cut out construction, add 5 million in design and cut out construction of other projects really is the only way you're really going to reach that 5 million. That would be a significant added burden on our projects development staff that I don't believe that we are capable of taking on at this time.
So you're saying that over the course of an entire year, there are adjustments of $5 million could not be made in any way that would allow the, moving forward of capital projects that otherwise weren't moving quite as fast. That can't be done?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, the reality is capital projects take an extensive amount of time. They take well over a year to design. They probably take about 1.5 to 2 years for right-of-way purchasing. And then we have the construction period of time. In that year, that your project development staff has a full budget that's been identified within that draft budget of work that needs to be done. We program as much work as we possibly can within a year within the staffing that we have available.
Commissioner Goldthorpe has something.
Yeah, and this is just to support what Ryan has just said. For several years, while I've been on this commission, I have attempted to do essentially the same thing that Commissioner McKinney would like to see happen. Only I was asking for really tiny things like filling sidewalk gaps. And it was very well explained to me by Paul Daigle about low-hanging fruit and the ability we do or don't have to do those things quickly. We couldn't then do more than a couple of $1 million tops with plenty of low-hanging fruit that didn't require right-of-way utilities and all kinds of other things to be done in order to construct some little minuscule facilities. And that's why what the director has just said about our inability to work $5 million into a capital budget, that's absolutely the case.
Does our general counsel have a comment?
Proceed with your motion or?
Apparently there's some more input to be had.
Madam President, Commissioners, for the record, Steve Price, General Counsel. I was simply up here for the procedural issues that were creeping up on us. The question is did you make a separate motion?
Yeah, no, I haven't.
Substitute motion?
Right, I haven't made a motion yet. It sounds like that the consensus is that no such change could be made, which strikes me as a bit odd, sort of tying the hands of the commission. Likewise, so much of our design work is done by consultants that and likewise, so many of our projects are funded through money that is, overages from one year that push into the next year. And if we had that additional funds in the capital projects budget, I'm sorry, I'm going on now. But so my comment is this: unless we can make some sort of change to reallocate our budget priorities in a way that goes toward facilitating in a greater way our core mission of building and maintaining building highways, I don't think I can support the budget as it stands. So I would offer a substitute motion that we approve the budget as presented with one change, that the approximate value of the property tax certification increase be moved from the community programs budget into the capital projects budget.
Is there a second? Substitute motion dies for lack of a second. Still back on our original motion. Okay, Commissioner Hanson?
Madam President, yeah, I'll ask the maker of the motion if you would consider that we do some study into a significant study into balancing where revenue is generated and where it is spent over the next year, so that we have a clear indication going into the next budget cycle, where the revenue is generated, especially property taxes, and where it is spent. And if that's the case, then I would support the motion.
No.
All right, well, I will just share that I'll echo the sentiments from the commission around the process to arrive at this budget. Thank you, Christine. Thank you to our leadership team for working so diligently on getting us such a comprehensive budget with details. And I feel like it's a really balanced and measured budget. I think, of course, the staff deserve their 3%. And, I personally have a lot of challenges personally with supporting taking the 3% in property taxes, because I think, although I agree with Commissioner Goldthorpe's point, we've received a lot of state legislative funds from our legislature. I think it's kind kind of challenging to also take an additional revenue when we've received so much from the legislature. But just due to the sake of the fact that we have to pass budgets and this institution is important to do all the things that we needed to do. And I'm not interested in jockeying for things that are essential, which include our community programs budget as well as our capital programs budget. So I'll also be supporting Commissioner Goldthorpe's motion. So all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Hey,
No.
Motion carries. All right, so moving on to our second item, resolution 2425. It's recovering the foregone property tax revenue. Right, we need to pass that. Yes, ma'am.
So they're taking notes.
Oh, you're fine.
So along with the budget approval, we do need commission to make a separate motion for the authorization of the property tax certification signature.
I'll make the motion to approve the authorization for the property taxes certification.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion that's different from what we've already talked about? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
nay.
No.
Motion carries. Congratulations. All right, moving on to public communications.
Oh,
Wait.
also the resolution
We've got-
for
Oh, yeah,
recovering
the
foregone.
resolution, sorry, my bad.
Really needy today.
Oh, sorry.
I'll
Commissioner Goldberg.
make it easy. I would recommend and make a motion that we approve resolution 2425, recovering foregone property tax
We
revenue
have to open that public.
Second.
hearing.
for the same reasons that I gave for the original motion
Got it.
before.
And it's been seconded by Commissioner Gold. Any discussion?
Well, Madam President,
Is it different from the
This is what
first
this part-
motion?
not really. I would oppose this simply for the same reasons that I discussed earlier.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Motion carries. Thank you. Anything else? All right, so public communications, is there anyone that would like to address the commission on any topic at this point?
Yes, Miss Savage.
Welcome. Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, President Pickering and Commissioners. My name is Cynthia Savage. I live at 9801 West Arabian Drive, and I am an ACHD employee. Mr. Hanson, Commissioner Hanson, I appreciate your comments today, but a couple of weeks ago, you said employees only come to the budget meeting to get our 3% COLA. That's not true. I'm here today for many reasons. I know earlier this year, the commission approved 14 roads in Ada County to receive road cushions. If my math is anywhere correct, that's close to 2,800 citizens that signed petitions to make their neighborhood safer. Cindy Thorpe, who has spearheaded the petition for Mitchell Street, the commission staff, I want to thank them, especially John Wasson, who has been working on the Mitchell Street project for over 2 years, for making the speed cushions happen, especially in my neighborhood. If you reviewed the traffic studies for Mitchell Street that were done, there was speed over 60 miles an hour in less than a half a mile between Victory and Arabian Drive. I am sure that there was a lot of tickets given out by the Ada County sheriffs. I want to thank you for having those speed cushions put in. They were put in last week. The traffic through my subdivision has totally done. So I think the Ada County sheriffs are happy about the speed cushions too. Lost my thing. One of the reasons why I'm here to speak to you today is thank you. Because currently the speed cushions is all my neighborhood needs. Before bulb outs, bicycle lanes, no parking signs, and along with 3 blinding lit stop signs that you normally see in rural Ada County in front of my home. I could go on about my opinion of the suggested improvements in Mitchell between Victory and Arabian. But I went to the open house and tried to ask my questions without satisfying answers. And yes, I answered all the questions in the survey, and yes, it was a verbose survey. I want to clarify that I also spoke to Christy Inselman, who listened to me, and I appreciate that. She took my comments and really listened to what I have to say. There will be another open house, and I hopefully the project manager, whoever that is, listens to the constituents in that neighborhood. We are totally different than a lot of areas in Ada County. We have horses come down a collector road. Horses come down, we have horse trailers, you name it, we come down Mitchell. I also want to thank Commissioner Goldthorpe for believing in Southwest Boise. Not only has he supported improvements at the end of Mitchell and Arabian Drive, the back entrance to Amity Elementary School, he has supported improvements, most recently like the school zone signals on Cloverdale and the pedestrian improvements on Victory near 5 Mile and many other things. I have a special shout out to our ACHD vegetation crew who came several years ago, got rid of all the weeds and the goat heads. I'm sure the children and parents of Amity Elementary appreciate it too. The vegetation crew came out last Friday and cleared it up again. And hopefully we're on the schedule annually, or else they'll get a call from me. I also finally want to thank my colleagues. ACHD has a lot of intelligent people who help us as citizens to get where we need to be and make the roads safer. I don't always agree with what my colleagues are saying, but I am always respectful. As commissioners, you all represent different citizens, different areas, and different needs of Ada County. I want to remind you of something. You are interacting with all citizens, no matter where you're at, not just at commission meetings. Always be respectful and mindful that the citizens are listening for the good and bad. Thank you for your time.
Yeah. Is there anyone else that would like to? address the
Patricia?
commission?
Yeah.
Patricia, welcome. You know the drill.
Thank you, Madam President, Commission members. So I'm here, I was going to talk
Name and
about,
address, please, madam.
what's that?
Name and address,
Name and
please.
Oh,
address for the
Patricia
record.
Nilsson, 3225 Snowflake Way, Boise, Idaho, 82706. Sorry, I know the drill, but I talk too fast. So I'm here as just a citizen, but I wanted to give you, just describe what, I'm on the board of the Southeast Neighborhood Association, and we met last Thursday. And since that meeting, we've been working on some communications with the city and ACHT to some degree on, we had our eyes opened up by a volunteer who came to us from the Boise Bicycle Project on a real need to put in bike repair stations. And there are some in Southeast. There's one at Timberline. We hope to put in a second one there, working with the school district. They've been very positive. But when I saw the micro-mobility corrals, those seem to be perfect locations for those. So I'm just encouraging the commission maybe to be mindful if those come up in the future in other communities around the county, that's kind of a perfect marriage of concentration of the vehicles and to have a relatively inexpensive repair station relative to the ability to get those vehicles operable and working. We had the volunteer from Boise Bicycle Project said it just killed him to see kids with broken bikes. And when they only came around once a year to do a bike repair clinic, that if they had a repair station there, and there's some that are extremely user-friendly, they could have been on their bikes most of the year instead of having the bike sit outside broken, and probably an easy fix for them. So part of it is promoting the use of non-motorized transportation, but also training young people on how to maintain their bikes. So I'm just telling you that story. And I also want to thank the ACHD staff. We had a meeting, I don't know, with Christy, it was several months ago, but they did, the crew went out and did repaint one of our school crossings on Carter. And so we just want to say our thanks for that. So that's it.
Great idea.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Anyone online? All right. Well, with that, meeting is adjourned.